Okay. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hello.
Amazing.
Yeah?
All good.
Very excited for you both to meet each other firstly. I love being the bridge between two people as always. But we're here to talk about a very interesting subject today, which is obviously a passion of yours both, and that is empowering students, particularly within financial wellness and education. So I think a great place to start, instead of me talking for an hour, would be for you both to introduce yourself. So who would like to go first?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Danielle Muntain, and I am the founder of Creatorversity, which is a creator university edtech platform teaching creators and empowering creators how to build their brands and businesses online.
Fantastic. I'm Benjamin, the founder and CEO of Quick, a student credit card to help students bank and build credit in the US.
Very cool. And if you could, you're both trying to achieve a particular mission. What is your mission in education and for students?
So my mission is to empower and teach entrepreneurs and creators how to build a brand and business doing what they love.
I think my mission really is to help students who come on an F1 visa to the US to get on that financial ladder, be able to build credit once they get a social, but also be able to bank when they get here and avoid all those foreign transaction fees from their hometown country.
For sure. So thank you for that. And I think the really interesting bridge here is that you both have a passion about students being financially empowered whilst they're actually studying. You know, Danielle, we've spoken about it a lot, 10 years ago, if you want to earn money whilst you're a student, good luck getting a job at the nearest ice cream parlor, right? With all of your studies on top. Whereas now it's never been easier to use your phone and become a content creator and monetize that. And basically that's the power that you're giving, and you're working on partnerships with some of the biggest universities in the country, in the United States, and similarly, you have a very similar goal. So I'm very curious as to how we can discuss the bridging of that, and generally some of the struggles, particularly around student wellness, that most students in the world are suffering from, especially the ones that are coming from a different country. And I think as we talk about how you're both tackling those issues, we can talk about some of the solutions as well, which people might find useful. So I am going to start with you, Benjamin.
Sure.
On this. Yeah.
I think when it comes to financial literacy around students, I think there's one thing that is lacked in schools growing up, high schools, colleges. I don't think that is something that is taught. I think it's something that you grasp upon learning around outside of schools and colleges, whereas like through the influencer market, through maybe your parents, or even just going into a bank and asking questions. So I think where I come in and where Quick come in is really providing that security around students' finance and wellness. And I think if what we're trying to do is be the Duolingo for financial literacy. And we've gamified our platform to do that, to provide lessons, quizzes, to really engage with the student and make them feel part of a community.
That's so beautiful. And I absolutely love what you're doing with Quick. And I think it's so needed because I feel like they don't teach us this information. And, this is something that we should be taught even in high school and elementary or middle school. And you would think that in, college or university that this would be something that people would really be well versed in.
Yeah.
And that's why I love what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think even for me, when I moved from London to Los Angeles, I found it very hard to get on that financial ladder. I tried to download some of these apps to open a bank account. They said, come into the branch. And I just said, there must be a simple way to simplify this, especially for students who don't really want to be on calling call centers or going into bank branches. They want to be simplified, like how they are on TikTok scrolling through. You want to make things really simple. And I think that's what we're trying to do, making it really simple, really engaging, and help students along their way.
For sure. And I think this is so important, especially for anyone that's wanting to get into the entrepreneurial space, is that, now we have such an advantage of anyone can start a business within their fingertips, like within 5 minutes even. And there's so much more potential for really fast exponential growth. Whereas I feel like, even in our parents' generation, it was like a lot more slower moving and times are changing. So I think that's so important that, students will have access to what you're doing here with Quick.
Definitely. And I think just generally, the influencer market itself, especially in financial literacy, and financial wellness is going to be key to our growth as well. Partnering up with people like yourself to push out our product and get people well versed in this industry.
I do think one really important thing to touch on more generically is that the result of a lack of financial literacy damages the general wellness of the students as well. And I think, Danielle, especially you firsthand, have seen some of the impact that can have on the well-being of a student. You know, if you don't have money, you're not going out, you're not socializing, etc. Have you encountered that with Creatorversity or in your general platform?
For sure. You know, I think that there's a lot of information out there that's kind of hard to know what to really tune into or learn from, like as a student, from a student's perspective, or as a new entrepreneur, someone that's breaking out into the creator space. And for myself, I feel like I've always been really lucky in terms of being able to bootstrap my business and, you know, build my businesses upon other businesses that I've started and kind of taken that route. And I feel like I've seen a lot, especially with students or people making maybe not the most like amazing financial decisions. So I think that there should be a lot more information out there, especially to help with students.
Could you speak more to actually your personal journey from that perspective? Like it sounds amazing to build a business from another business, but you know, I know you quite well and you've had to go through quite a lot of challenges, especially when you were studying. Could you tell us more about your personal journey from that perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I was always someone that would like take a lot of risk and leaps of faith, and thank goodness that it's led to a really good place. And I think it was just a lot of learning to listen to my intuition, but then also learning from, like back in the day, you know, listening or trying to find information like on YouTube of advice maybe from some top like business experts or entrepreneurs. And that's actually kind of what propelled my journey a little bit. And I got really lucky. I kind of started this business that I didn't expect it to take off. And it was what allowed me to kind of be able to travel the world and really learn so much more about business and life. And it really inspired me to be able to start other businesses, which is kind of where I'm at now.
And would you say, sorry, just one more question.
Sure.
No, I'm so curious.
Yeah.
When you were studying, what was your knowledge of financial literacy, if any?
I didn't really have much. Yeah,
so you needed
not
quick.
Much. Yeah, I needed quick. Where were you back then? Come on. Yeah, I didn't have that much. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I kind of took some like inspiration, I guess, from that. And I think that even just from a young age, I moved across the world when I was 19, and I started to take a lot of risks pretty early that I kind of learned a lot about the world and just from the people that I met and experiences that I was having.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, in general, thanks for that. I think obviously what you're doing with Quick is tackling some of those challenges. But even if someone doesn't join Quick today or tomorrow, what are some of the challenges and solutions, in your opinion, that some of the students that are especially coming to the US where the cost of living is quite high, what are some of the things that you wish you would have known and some of the things that's just, I guess, available information that the average person doesn't know?
I think the one thing that I would have known, put Quick to a side, I think if you were to read up and use the influencer market to understand how to build credit, how to get a bank account, rather than what you're actually not taught in school, where it's this traditional way of you going into a bank branch, you doing those things. But what about if someone's in a foreign country coming to the US? Why would they need to wait to get to the US to go and do those things? It should be that they be able to download an app, apply for a bank account, go through a KYC and get an account. It should be that simple. And I think that is why, you know, in this world where we come into in the US, I think if there was a simplified platform to do that, it can scale really fast.
For sure. So could you just focus more on the actual existing problem, in the sense that at the moment there are students coming here and they aren't necessarily downloading an app or even aware of an app that can solve all of their problems. But what is the current challenge that they are going through? Both, I mean, we've discussed the results and what that can lead to, but in terms of the initial barrier, lack of knowledge and lack of, like you said, you know, credit, access to credit.
Lack of access to credit, and also the fear of debt. Fear of debt is really, really key. You know, you can go into a high street bank, you can get approved for a credit card, they'll give you a $1,500 limit, And a student who's not well versed in financial literacy can go wild and spend that $1,500 and then end up having a credit card debt. And we all know the credit card interest rates are really, really high. So that could cause a student to go into a serious debt problem.
So that's for sure in terms of getting access to credit, etc. But at the moment, I think that the initial challenge of a student, especially coming from a different country, is, well, I'm currently using this currency. I can use this magic card and I don't have to, they feel good because I'm saving money on conversion. But like you said, it's deeper than that, right? So my question to you would be, if they're able to solve that problem already, why is the need to build credit something that they should even be concerned about?
So I think the whole credit system, especially in the US, is everything. To get an apartment, to get a mobile phone contract, to apply for a mortgage later on down the line. Like when I moved over, I had to pay 12 months up front of my apartment. I couldn't get credit. I couldn't. My landlord said, look, you're new. I need security. And that's great. And look, don't get me wrong, there are guarantors out there that can help you out. But credit is a really big thing in the US. And I had the issue when I came here. I couldn't get an apartment. I couldn't get a mobile phone contract. I had to piggyback off my wife on a lot of things. And she wasn't even my wife yet. She was my fiance. So
still married you, huh?
You're still having that conversation. So no, and I think foreign nationals especially, they don't get a social till their OPT year, which is second or third year once they actually can start working.
What does that mean?
So their OPT is when they can actually start working in the US. And they get a social to do that. So that when they first get here, they don't have a social, and a lot of bank accounts, you actually do need a social to get started. We don't. We just require a passport, F1 visa, and a proof of address, which can be your dorm at your university.
Very cool. So look, one thing I'm really interested in talking about today as well is actually the bridge between you two, whereby, for example, with Creatorversity, part of your platform will be helping students with financial literacy, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to make this introduction in the first place. Could you speak to any examples of an example of a course or something that a student could sign up to get any kind of content or education through Creatorversity?
For sure. So we have our main Creatorversity course. And so this course will essentially help anyone in any stage of their journey as a creator. And so you don't have to be a creator in terms of wanting to become an influencer, but you could just be starting any type of brand or business. And this course will help you be able to grow that. So we have all different courses within branding, personal development, social media marketing, content creation, photography, editing, personal growth. So it basically helps every single aspect of someone building a business. Yeah. Because as a creator, you're not just, building a brand through content. You're building a profitable business.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I really like that. I really like what you touched on there, because I think, especially in this world where every student, every Gen Z is scrolling through a TikTok or an Instagram reel, I think the content that is produced and the creativity around it is really going to be key. And especially with what you're doing and you're teaching how to do that, that for a student is great in the Gen Z world.
If, let's just say, through the power of Quick, students were becoming more attuned to their financial literacy and they wanted to impart that wisdom, right? Could you speak to how they might monetize that through the form of becoming a content creator? Because I actually notice very often, as do you, which we've spoken about a lot, financial literacy content creators are one of the fastest growing channels on social media. So
mostly because of the affiliates program that a lot of the fintechs go out on now, where you can essentially, content creators sign up with the fintech, they get a unique QR code or a URL, and they push out content to drive app installs, and they get a reward on every sign up. So it does there's an incentive there for the content creator.
In other words,
that's how they can monetize.
Gain the knowledge. Now to you, Danielle, monetize that knowledge by growing a channel. Now kind of like stepping back from that for a second, you receive that knowledge. How do you grow your channel from scratch? Because look, at the end of the day, it's all about giving value to the end user, to the audience. But how do I turn that into a business? How do I turn that into a channel that people watch?
For sure. Well, I think it really comes down to knowing what you're wanting to create. So it really comes down to, your purpose and your mission, like what your goals are for whatever it is that you're wanting to create in terms of your brand or business. So it really starts with self-awareness of, you know, what you're passionate about and what you're going to be willing to put in all that time and energy into that brand or whatever it is that you're creating. It doesn't really matter what you're creating, but it just matters like what you're going to be passionate about and what you will actually put all of your time and energy and money into.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of money that can go into starting a business, but there's so much that goes into growing a brand, and it really comes down some key things like consistency and, you know, whatever channel it is that you're on, and of course product, if you are wanting to develop a product, or if you're wanting to develop like an online course or whatever it is. But it really comes down to, I think, the self-awareness of like who you are and what you want to create.
For sure. Remind me where you were in life when you started creating content.
Wow. I mean, this was actually before the word creator influencer was even a thing. So I started fashion styling when I was 16. And I just loved it because I loved fashion.
The real life entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. I was 16. I knew and I grew up in a place where, you know, the creative industry wasn't a thing at all. And so I kind of, you know, had to really break out of that and actually bought a one-way ticket to Ibiza, funnily enough.
As one does.
Yeah. And that really opened my mind to kind of what was possible. And I worked with some different magazines in Paris. I bought myself a camera. I started to do creative direction. And then I loved traveling. So I would take content whenever I would travel. And I remember it was just so foreign for people back then. Like people would be like, why are you posting photos of yourself? Like, this was like back when it, you know.
And that was, I guess, on Instagram back then as well? Still?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
still,
cool.
Yeah. So the word creator influencer wasn't a thing. It was just like, you know, blogging was a thing.
Yeah. And everyone thought you were sort of weird at the time.
Oh, yeah. People thought I was so weird. Like the amount of times I got made fun of. And, you know, it's funny because I was just like watching some like YouTubers that were like, you know, kind of predicting the future of where social media was going. And I was like, I hope that this is right. I hope what I'm following
I bet they're not
is
laughing
right.
now.
There you go.
Definitely not laughing now. Yeah. And I never expected it to grow into, you know, what it is now. But I actually was just doing it because I loved it. I always loved taking photos, and it was kind of like an art for me. And I started doing creative direction for photo shoots and video shoots and campaigns, commercials. And then when I was just posting content for fun on my social media, that's when brands started to reach out. And I was kind of doing the solo female traveler thing before like there was many solo female travelers. So that had some pieces of content go viral. And then that was kind of when my eyes opened. I was like, wow, this is like, my life just started to change. Like, you know, was able to kind of like grow my business and work from anywhere, and started a marketing agency, so doing content and marketing for brands on a global scale, and got to work with some of the largest brands around the world just through building my content. So it's definitely been life-changing for sure.
Amazing.
It's fun to analyze yourself, and I'm so happy I'm forcing you to do that now. But I'm just curious. Let's just say, you know, Danielle from a few years ago came to Danielle now and said, you know, here's my portfolio. This is the value that I offer. This is the audience I'm trying to get. And, you know, these are some of the brands I would like to work with. How would you assess the value that was being offered, the distribution, and what targets would you have given her to achieve her goals at the time, knowing what you've been through?
Wow, really putting me on the spot here.
Yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Those are great
Gotta
questions.
preach it.
Wow, yeah. I think that it's so important to kind of like have a bit of a loose plan, like in terms of like the value and like what, you know, writing it down, like what brands maybe you would dream to work with. And
Sure. I mean, like, why did brands approach you? Like you said, almost casually, yeah, brands are coming up to me asking to pay me money to, you know, make content.
Well, quality of content is
Right.
definitely a really big piece. And I think because I already worked in, you know, the content space on like the other side, like doing creative direction for like really large scale brands and campaigns, that I already had that knowledge. So creating like really high quality content and, you know, having like good, you don't have to have like, you know, $10,000 camera, but like as long as, you know, you're creating like cohesive content and like the editing is good and kind of the storytelling behind the content, like a little goes a long way. And I think brands and people can really feel that when you put that little bit of extra effort in, compared to, you know, some other creators, it definitely goes a long way. And consistency too, because it can be, you know, so it can definitely be like a little bit challenging if you feel like you're not growing fast enough or anything. But I think a lot of people need to have a lot more patience when, you know, because it's like you're growing your brand. You have to think of it like growing a business that, you know, a lot of businesses, it's going to take 5 years sometimes before you even see traction. So I think that knowing that you're in it for the long game is so important, because then you're going to keep up with that consistency even when no one's watching, when no one's clapping for you. And I think that's another thing, is the self-belief, and that's actually a big thing that I've had to overcome, is like self-doubt. And I think fear of being seen is like the biggest thing that I see students struggle with. And like the fear of judgment from other people, like starting any type of business or brand, you know. And I think that in terms of like, it comes down to like knowing yourself, and like if you really believe in yourself and what you're doing, really listening to that and kind of tuning out the people that maybe aren't, you know, that are the haters, like, tuning out the people that maybe aren't like super positive of what you're creating.
For sure. No, that's great. So let me just ask you one more thing on that. So if I am, you know, wanting to get into this space, whether it be creating a new product or just, you know, becoming that consistent content creator, what kind of structure would I expect to receive when I'm studying a course with Creatorversity?
For sure. So if you're starting out like for content production, doing content calendars. So we have a ton of different setups for you to see like what type of content calendar you're wanting to create. So for example, for those of you that don't know, if you're creating any type of brand or you're really pushing out content, kind of the most strategic way to do it is to build up a large amount of content that you can put out, because there's so much more that goes on between like the filming, the editing, the distribution, and the actual planning of, let's say if you're doing like a launch, like for Quick, you know, there's specific launch plans that we give our students, for example, and or for students that are wanting to maybe like pitch different companies, like whether they're wanting to partner with them as a creator, if they want to partner with them like just as, you know, business owner to business owner, we have different pitch decks that we give creators. So it depends on like where they are in their creator journey.
Wow.
Yeah. And just to jump in, when you create content, are you more solo? Do you partner up with different influencers and do some content together, or are you more like, this is me sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it depends on like whatever project it is that I'm doing. Like sometimes depending on the scale of the project, I'll either have like my team, or I've done a lot of, you know, that's what I think is so amazing now too, is that there's so many people like that are creators, entrepreneurs, and that's why we love our community.
Yeah, the collaborations are great. Yeah,
for sure. Because, you know, I mean, you can shoot yourself solo, which I have so much, but it's honestly, it can be so much more fun and like even just collaborative, and it can sometimes be easier when you're shooting with another person too. So
as long as you've got me moderating.
That's it.
We're gonna keep you putting you to work.
No, that's no problem. I mean, and again, so that's really interesting to hear about the structure of like the education side of your business. And similarly, you know, lots of fintech platforms are launching their cards, and there is no educational component, right? You've kind of gone about it a different way, where from day one, you're going to have that education content in place. Could you speak to what a student might expect to receive when they sign up?
So the first thing that we had when we were looking to build out the financial literacy was, and it goes back to the first days of when we started, is do we buy the tech or do we build the tech? And we chose to build. And the reason why we chose to build is very simple, is we want to be that person who's providing that experience to our users. And I feel like the only way that I can produce my vision on what the student wants is by doing it yourself. And there is tech out there. There are financial wellness platforms there that are white labeled, that you can integrate with your app, and you can buy it and just plug and play and you're good to go. That's not the approach Quick took. I wanted to build something that is going to be user engaged. There's going to be financial literacy there for students to learn and really adapt to where they are in their financial journey. And the journey, it starts with Quick and it can end, going into a different platform where they might need to explore, in the sense of when they want to go out and get a mortgage, or they might need to actually go and get a credit card with a high limit. I think that is where we stand in the space, and that's what we want to teach our student, is teach our user even, is to provide that financial literacy. And that's why we built it from scratch.
And in terms of like the format that they're studying in, obviously it's on an app, right? Where generally they're using your card to get cash back, and they're building credit. How does the education part look?
The education part looks the same. So you can watch videos, you get tested on the videos, you go through quizzes, multiple choice. Some of them are comprehensive. It's a very different approach from other financial wellness programs that I've seen. Is we want that engagement rate to be high. So the multiple choice, we know the Gen Z world, they don't have that attention span that we all think that they should have. But that's why we're doing it at a small scale. Giving small pieces of content, and then once they adapt to that content, they can go and do a test on it. So I think where we're coming in at is we're trying to use the Gen Z world to help them on their journey of the financial literacy.
I love that. And I think you're doing it the right way as well, like going back to building a brand, and you're giving value and you're giving education like around the business that you're creating. And I think that's so important, like as well with building any type of like product or any type of business, is giving as much value to the consumer,
for sure.
And even just like giving way more education or whatever it is, like through your content, through podcasting or through Instagram or TikTok, and it's been so cool to see how TikTok now has become it's becoming like almost like the new Google. Like people are using it as a search engine now, and for education. So there's so many different outlets that you can do.
And it's great you touched on that. And that's why, in the TikTok space, it's really a B2C sort of platform. And my previous businesses were all B2B. So this is quite new to me. I've started in Jan 24. B2C is really about the narrative that you push across. So when we're talking about narrative, it's your logo, your colors, everything about your app and what they're seeing on a daily basis is key to success. When you talk about B2B businesses, I don't think a color or logo really is mattered enough than what a B2C is.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for that, guys. I've got a quick idea. Listen, at the end of the day, yeah. You've got to pay me extra for that. Look, I can't help it, especially when it comes to partnerships. Like that's always been my background, especially from a B2B perspective. Clearly there's synergy between you two. Like, maybe there's some potential collaboration where students of Creatorversity are maybe helping with your content. And similarly, there's some content that could be given to students of Creatorversity to help push and vice versa. So when are you going to sign?
Look, we're always looking for partners at Quick. We want to partner up with as many people in the student space as possible. We want to help the student community. And that's what we're looking. That's always open to partnerships.
Amazing. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Cool.
Let's do it quick.
Yeah. Okay, enough of that. Okay. Well, I think, were there any I'm personally going to share some closing thoughts. I think you've both touched on something which is really, really important, and ultimately it revolves around student wellness. Obviously, it's worth mentioning, I come from an education background as well. I launched a university in London called College of Esports. I witnessed firsthand the cost of living crisis that, similarly in the UK, it's quite prominent as well. And the ramifications of that when it comes to mental health is very strong. Financial literacy, I do feel like, was at the root of it, because students couldn't pay for their accommodation. They had to get guarantors and they were dealing with the stress. So they'd get unwell, they'd miss classes, et cetera. So I think two really strong things here. One is, Danielle, I think the fact that you're giving students the opportunity to monetize what they hold in their hands all day, every day, and don't monetize, which is their phone, is the most incredible thing. And you've already, started giving courses to students all over the country. So that's awesome. And similarly, Benj, I've known you for many, many years. I think what you're doing is nail on the head. Financial literacy doesn't exist. I didn't even have it as a student. In fact, I only learned more about it when I had launched university and had to help individual students at a time take control of their finances, because if they didn't, they weren't lasting at the university. So yeah, I think following this, feel free to, give me like an introductory fee or whatever when you do your partnership. But I don't think this will be the first time we have this conversation, because you're both somewhat, you're not necessarily startups, but you're at more of the beginning of your individual journeys with these brands. And as you grow, I think it would be great to have a running commentary on how things are going and some of the impacts and case studies that you've had with students.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks,
really
guys.
good day.
Thank you for
Cool.
listening.
Thank you.